Hi, Dave. So obviously, welcome to the Teacher's Voice podcast. If you could just give everyone a little bit of an introduction to yourself, that'd be fantastic.
Okay, good morning. So my name is Dave Malachi, and I hold the privileged position of being the deputy head teacher of London Enterprise Academy in London, which is an 11 to 16 free school based on the city fringe in the west of Tower Hamlets.
Right. What's the general sort of demographics of the school?
So we serve an absolutely brilliant community. So
Okay.
predominantly community members from Bangladesh and from Somalia, as well as a smattering of Eastern European students.
Right.
The community we serve, it's quite diverse. So you have absolute poverty sitting next to relative wealth, and that in itself can cause problems, but also opportunities.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like most of the students, is English their second language?
Yes, indeed, and in some cases, third or fourth language.
Oh, really? How
Yeah.
how is that to teach?
Um, Lots of planning, lots of differentiation, and lots of creativity. At the end of the day, as a teacher, it's your responsibility to do the absolute best by the children. So you find ways. We're very lucky in our school. We have a brilliant access to learning team who provide our students with additional in class and out of class support.
Sure.
So, yeah, can be a challenge, but if you focus in on what the children really need, um, actually that challenge can be quite fun.
Really? Okay. I mean, so you're obviously a deputy principal, you said.
Yeah.
Like, what's your journey been to get into where you are today?
Oh God. Right. So I've held a number of roles. I've taught every year group from nursery right the way through to year 14.
Right.
And I've also been involved in teacher education as well. A very interested route, rather convoluted. Um, I've taught in primary, I've taught in secondary, I've taught in further education and sixth forms.
Yeah.
I'm an Ofsted inspector as well, and so my journey has been a bit of a meandering path, if you like. I've always been a bit like I love teaching. It's the one thing that absolutely inspires me. And so when I look back on my career, I've always been a bit like the kid in the candy shop. So I always wanted a bit of this and a bit of that, and I wanted to try this and I wanted to do this. And so when you look at my CV, it looks quite fractured because that hasn't been that natural progression through.
Right.
But what I have picked up along the way is a huge amount of experience which has really been informed by the children and young people that I've taught.
Sure. I mean, like through my experience, I mean, I've been a recruiter for over 5.5 years, and obviously one of the things that schools tend to say is if somebody's kind of moved around a lot, it's kind of almost has a negative view on that person. But I mean, you've done really well because you've kind of like gone against that view, and you've obviously moved around a little bit. But I mean, you've still really done really well to progress in your career, and obviously you're a deputy principal now. So I mean, what would you say to that?
I mean, there is a lot of prejudice to people who have moved around quite a bit. The assumption being is you can't stay in one place for more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, Conversely, I have seen colleagues who have been in the same school or college for 20, 30 years. I'll say no more. Um, um, what I'd like to think, and what I think I've demonstrated, is that I have a wealth of experience that I'm able to bring to an organisation. Um, and also, thinking about some of our younger teachers today, it's incredibly difficult to live in London. And so you are going to see a great deal of mobility, I think, as teachers come to terms with the economic situation and the need to move around quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, but yeah, no, it has been, there has been questions as well, why have you moved about? What is wrong with you? And actually, there is nothing wrong with me. I've just wanted to experience and sample different contexts. And I do think that certainly in a school like mine, having primary experience, having experience in teacher education, having experience in inspection, and having experience in further education, it's equipped me with a whole load of tools, I feel, that I can take and apply.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, like, did you always know you wanted to become a teacher?
Absolutely not.
What was the route before teaching?
So I come from a family of teachers, and I was absolutely adamant I was not going to follow in their footsteps. Oh God, no. I don't know. I guess so. I started my career as an education social worker with the old Inner London Education Authority.
Okay.
So going back quite a bit, I had hair then and was like a quarter of the size that I am. I always worked with children and young people. I always found that aspect of work really, really rewarding. And oh God, about 30 years ago, I worked in a social care organisation that expanded into education, and by default became head of education and training. And then the rest is history, I guess. I got the bug. I got the bug, rather, I should say. Bug, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. So, I mean, and how long have you been in teaching now then, like in total?
Longer than you've been alive.
No, I don't know about that one. I mean, like, what are the last 7 months been like then?
It's been really difficult. Well, I think the first thing I would have to do is to pay tribute to our students and their families and our teachers. It's been incredibly tough. Our school serves, as I said earlier, a community which experiences significant deprivation, sitting alongside wealth. For a lot of our families, they live in poor housing conditions. Up to 12 members of a family in a two-bedroom flat. Parents working multiple low-paid jobs in order to put food on the table. When lockdown came along, our families didn't have the luxury of furlough. They went from income to no income overnight. The whole system of universal credit meant that for a lot of our families, accessing state funding was really, really difficult. And so one of the things that we did as a school was make the decision not only to provide free school meals, but actually to feed whole families for 7 days a week. Yeah.
That's
so,
amazing.
well, what do? We can't expect children to engage in learning if they're hungry. And actually, we have a moral responsibility. We're not just about educating. We're actually there to care for the children and to support the extended family. And it wasn't just our school. So I'm thinking of a number of schools. Woodside School over in Haringey, under the leadership of Jerry Robinson. They did an amazing job. Schools in Tower Hamlets, the food banks. We all worked together to make sure that our families got fed. But we had teachers out till 9 o'clock at night delivering food to families.
That's amazing.
It's what you do, as I said, it isn't just about teaching. We have a professional and a moral responsibility to our families. But yeah, no, it has been tough. I think the conversion from face-to-face teaching to online teaching has presented problems. Our teachers have been absolutely amazing, but they themselves have had to struggle with sitting in front of a computer for 7 hours a day, delivering and engaging children, as well as, dealing with their own circumstances. We have a number of young teachers, we have a number of teachers from overseas who were having to, suppress their own emotions. They were really worried about their family members and themselves as well. So it has been tough. It's been tough on our children.
Sure.
They've gone from having freedom to restricted freedom, and you can only just imagine what it would be like to be living in substandard accommodation with a whole load of people vying for internet access, vying for a space to study. It's been tough.
I bet. I mean, for the majority of people, I think they would say, well, most people would have Wi-Fi, right? I mean, like, or have access to the internet. Like, in terms of the demographics of your school, would you say that's not a common thing?
No, absolutely not. One of the things that we had to do was to provide mobile dongles and computer hardware. So every child was given, a laptop or an iPad with internet access, so that they could access the online learning. Um, I'm really angry at present with the government and the whole free school meals
Yeah.
situation. Um, Families need this support.
Sure.
It's not going to go away. And a bonus payment at Christmas. Well, what about now? What about this half term?
Sure. I mean, like, look, obviously, I think a lot of people would say to that, every year the students will go without free meals over half term and the holidays. Like, just without kind of sounding too obvious, but why do you think it's extra important this year that we obviously feed these children over half term?
Because so many families have had a drop or a loss of income.
Mm,
This lockdown and the economic repercussions, it's been absolutely huge, and particularly for our school.
sure.
With the hospitality and entertainment industry closing, they were the main employers for many of our families.
Yeah.
You know, it's yeah.
I mean, you obviously said you're quite angry with the government. I mean, I completely don't understand why the government would say no to giving free meals. I mean, they had the help to eat scheme for a month over August, where they paid for half of everyone's meals to go eat out, but they can't feed hungry children. I mean, I just can't like work out the logic behind their rationale.
I'm really, really struggling. But what I would want to say is that there are companies out there. So, for example, faux restaurants who are providing 6,000 free lunches for children over the half term.
Wow.
So, in the midst of all of this, you've got companies with a strong moral and ethical compass who are doing their bit. It's just a pity that our government aren't supporting the children in the way in which they should.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, in an ideal world, what would you want the government to do? Like, what could they do to help schools and help these students that come from sort of less fortunate backgrounds? I mean, what could they do?
I think the immediate priority is to make sure that families have access to an income and by default have access to food
Sure.
and to resources to pay for essential services such as gas and electricity. I know the government put in an initiative to ensure that landlords were not evicting families, but I'm yet to be convinced that unfair practice is not taking place.
Sure. I mean, I almost sometimes look at everything the government's doing, and it's almost to protect the bigger businesses and stop people from going out of jobs and to keep the big businesses afloat. But it's almost like the little man is kind of penalised in some ways because trying to get, I mean, I had to at one point try to see if I can get universal credit, but they said I had to leave my company. They said I had to go out and work. And I was like, look, I've got a business to run. And unfortunately, I can't do that. And it was so difficult to get universal credit. I mean, for those families that need that immediate income, I mean, it's like, what can the government do other than universal credit to try to support these families?
I think they need to immediately look at some locally administered relief schemes, and schools can support with that. We know the families, we have the information. Let's not lose sight of the fact that the young people that we are educating, the young people that we're trying to support, will be the workforce of the future.
Exactly. Of course.
It's nonsensical to not support our children.
No, absolutely. I mean, what do you think the future of education looks like? I mean, where do you see it going in the next year, in the next 3 years?
The one thing I can say is that teachers are a resilient bunch. We've had a hard press.
Yeah, of
You
course
know,
it has.
different parts of the media have taken, swipes at us. The interesting character Katie Hopkins came out with some pretty awful attacks upon the profession. What would education look like? who can say? We don't know whether we're going to go back into another lockdown. I can say from my own school perspective that if we do go into a lockdown, we can immediately switch to online learning.
Just a
But we
quick,
know that,
sorry,
yeah,
just before you
but
carry on.
online learning isn't the answer. Children need
Yeah,
to have that social interaction. They need to have that one-to-one feedback. They need to have. School isn't just about GCSEs and A levels. It's also about the processes of learning social skills around developing resilience. Um,
absolutely.
we, as a profession, will do as much as we can via remote learning. But the landscape is very rocky at present. No one can predict.
How difficult is it to teach online?
I think,
Or
I
where do
think
the
the,
difficulties lie?
I think for teachers, it's about being sat in front of a screen for a long period of time and staying motivated. Um, Similarly, in terms of children, I think some of the challenges certainly initially were around accessing, but when we were able to overcome that, um, maintaining the children's interest. There is something really special about the human connection within the classroom that you just cannot replicate online.
Yeah, sure.
Um, yeah.
I mean, I went to Art Greenwich Free School on Thursday, and I done an enrichment day. So I was speaking with, like, this is the first time I've interacted with 30 students in one go, and it was a fantastic experience. I mean, it's so rewarding to see them talking about their lives and things that they're not confident about, and that difference that you can make to them just by giving them certain advice and being there for them to listen to and speak to. And I mean, you just won't get that level of connection like over sort of teaching them online or interacting with
No.
them over the phone. I mean, how important is it for students to get back into full-time learning as soon as possible?
It's absolutely crucial. It's absolutely crucial. And as I said earlier, it isn't just about the exams at the end of year 11 or year 13. It's about those wider skills, the skills of relationship forming, developing social skills, developing resilience, actually having that human contact. Um, so important. The emotional well-being of children is something that I think has been significantly underestimated in all of the big political debates. We know there's been a rise in safeguarding referrals. We know that the mental health and well-being of young people has suffered as a result of isolation, compounded with other factors that children and their families are having to face.
Yeah, it's insane, isn't it? Um, yeah, it's absolutely insane. I mean, like, what does it mean, like, for a school perspective, though? I mean, like, are budgets even tighter? Are there more things that you have to be wary about? How hard is it from a senior leadership level to be operating in a school at the moment?
Okay, I have to pay tribute to our principal, Ashid Ali, who has over the years really demonstrated phenomenal financial skills, which has meant that the school financially is in a very healthy position. That has meant that we've not had to worry about providing for children, in terms of hardware, for equipment, in terms of resources. But I do know of colleagues in the sector who are really struggling with school budgets, which are shrinking, and with limited reserves and resources. So it is a mixed picture.
Of course. I mean, budgets are quite tight within schools usually on the best of years, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, what has it been about this year that has made the budgets even tighter?
Certainly around staffing, um, you know, where teachers have had to self-isolate, and other staff have had to self-isolate. You still have to run a school. It still has to be safe. And so the impact will have been around staffing budgets. The impact will have been around consumable budgets and equipment budgets. Providing laptops. The government laptop scheme. We got 10 laptops given to us by the
For your
government.
students?
Yes.
Just to obviously make everyone aware, how many students go to London Enterprise Academy?
Around 450.
And how many of them would have needed laptops?
300.
Yeah, so that you got received 10. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a big problem sometimes with what the government says that they're going to do. I mean, in hindsight, it sounds fantastic, but when it actually comes down to actually making a difference, they don't. It doesn't, unfortunately. And it's like, how do you pick the 10 that need the laptop the most? You know?
Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. We were really grateful. So thank you, DFE. Um, Anything you can provide us with, we'll gratefully accept. But the reality is that, again, if you're working in an area where there is a high level of deprivation, people don't necessarily have access to technology. And also, don't forget that where you have families where they have um, 2, 3, 4 children, um, sometimes it isn't around the internet connectivity. It's actually about having access to a device. Now, if you've got a child in year 7, a child in year 8, and perhaps somebody in key stage 2, you can't all share the same device at the same time. So, there are practical considerations. But I know of families where 2 or 3 households have been sharing the same internet.
Sharing the same internet.
Yeah.
That's insane. I
Yeah.
mean, so what's the answer? I mean, of course, it's really difficult to say because we don't know what's going to happen with COVID. I mean, when it first happened, I thought we were going to go back after Easter holidays at the beginning of this year. So, I mean, it's now 6 months later, and we're still sort of in the pandemic. I mean, we've probably got another 6 months to go. But what can we do now, or what do we need to start doing to try to make things better?
I think at a local level, schools do have in place what they need to do in order to provide continuity
Okay.
to children and to provide support to children. So I think at a local level, schools have reacted exceptionally, responsively, and I'm talking to other colleagues up and down the country. It's amazing to hear how schools have responded. I think in terms of going forward, and I'm sure people are going to say, yeah, we hear this all the time. But if we are going to truly maintain a standard of education, then we need the resourcing. Okay, 10 laptops isn't going to cut it.
Sure.
Okay, where schools don't have the budget, we need to ensure that schools have access to equipment for children to use. We need children to be fed as well. We need children to be clothed and to be kept warm. We need support within social care, so that when things do go wrong in the family, that there are enough social workers to respond to the needs of children in need.
Yeah. I mean,
But it isn't just about the learning, it's about that wider support requirement that children and families need in order to get through what are outrageously difficult times.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, listening to all of that, I think if anybody was looking to get into teaching, they'll probably be really scared to get into teaching now, right? I mean,
No. Let me be really, really clear, okay? Teaching is the best job in the world. It really is.
I love your enthusiasm.
No. It really is. There are some days you come home, you're thinking, why am I doing this? Oh my God. But there are other days. So, I'm thinking back to last Friday with my year 7 English class, who are just off the scale amazing, who come out with the most, but with the most bizarre things at times. Who absolutely make your day. Look, it's tough. Teaching in a London is tough. We're not just teachers, we're social workers, we're quasi-police officers, we're counsellors, we're anything that we need to be in order to make sure that children remain paramount and central to the process. But it is still an absolutely rewarding career. And even on those tough days where you're thinking, I'm not sure I can do this anymore, if you step back and reflect and just think about what you are doing, and it really is about working some amazing, sometimes difficult, sometimes interesting young people. It's about creating a future, and yes, on one level that sounds a bit cheesy, but that really is the reality.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
So doesn't matter what you've heard, okay? Teaching really, really, really is the absolute best job in the world. And I still get a buzz every day, and I'm old.
I mean, what kind of advice can you give to anybody that's maybe looking to get into teaching, or somebody that's maybe doing their PGCE at the moment? Like, what advice would you give them? How do they survive this?
Right. You have to teach for the right reasons, okay? And I don't know if anybody has seen the film Bad Teacher. It isn't about long holidays or no accountability. Okay, you are accountable, and yes, you do get more holidays than some of your contemporaries. Okay, um, but it's still hard work. Okay, primarily you have to like young people,
Yeah.
and you have to be prepared to think out of the box and be creative beyond your wildest dreams. For anybody doing a PGCE right now, I would say hold your nerve and find a school where you feel that you will be able to make a contribution. And when you get in there, roll your sleeves up and enjoy it.
I mean,
Okay,
it's
just
quite a
enjoy
hard
it.
year, isn't it,
Immerse
to enjoy it?
yourself. Immerse yourself in the chaos and the madness and the creativity and the brilliance that children demonstrate on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
I mean, I mean, how disheartening is it when you have so much passion and you clearly it's so infectious, right? It oozes out of you, and it's. I mean, this is the first time we've spoken in person, well, albeit virtually, but it's the first time we've spoken sort of face to face, and it's very very clear to me that how passionate you are about teaching. I mean, literally, your enthusiasm, like I said, is very infectious. I mean, how disheartening is it when you try to do everything from your side and you don't have that support from the government?
It's about remembering why you're there. And the bottom line is, I'm there for the children, the families, and the community that I serve. And yes, you get irritated hugely from time to time with people who don't have a clue about what it's like to teach, let alone teaching in an inner city school. But you have to put that to one side. And it comes back to why you chose to be a teacher.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
The rest of it is immaterial. When you're in that classroom with those children and you're giving your absolute best, at the end of the day, I'm not really interested in what the government has to say.
of course.
You know, my focus is on the children, their learning, their development, um, and in turn, yeah, it's the rewards you get are amazing. So don't focus on the negatives. We're not going to change government overnight. Okay, we're not going to change public opinion overnight. But what we can do is get ourselves into these classrooms and change lives and make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're obviously a deputy principal, and I think, I think hopefully a lot of the viewers that will be watching this will probably be PGC students or people that are looking to get into teaching. I mean, you've obviously gone from obviously starting your career as a trainee like everybody else, right? And you've worked up to deputy principal. I mean, what do you think that you've done to make yourself stand out, and what do you look for when you're now employing teachers for your school?
Okay, what have I done to stand out? I don't know. I've probably irritated a few heads and principals along the way. Um, I've held the faith. And I've held on to the fundamental belief that every child can be educated, that every child deserves a right, and every child deserves a chance. And I think those guiding principles that have kept me grounded. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, and what kind of and what do you look for within, like, what do you look for in teachers that sort of applying for roles at your school or with
Okay.
your, yeah.
Right. So I mean, I've already said this. You've got to like children. You've got to like teenagers, particularly the cheeky, chippy ones. Okay. There's loads of them.
Yep.
Okay. You have to demonstrate creativity and passion. Okay. Not only for your subject, but for um, you
What's
need
what?
to be able to demonstrate that you're going to commit to the wider school life.
Sure.
Okay, you're not just a teacher. You wear a number of hats. You don't rock up at 8:30 in the morning and walk out at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, um,
What do
what
you
I
do?
what I'm looking for are teachers who are prepared to commit to the school, and teachers who are prepared to go above and beyond.
Absolutely. I mean, I think especially the newer generation that I find it, maybe it's less so in teaching, but I think it is as well because I speak to a lot of teachers, and sometimes it's about I want to work till at 3:30. I want to go home and then not think about school. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. I think like what I'm trying to get at is you have to go above and beyond if you really want to be successful and you want to kind of progress in your career. You have to go above and beyond. It's not just about your individual work. It's about how are you going to benefit the whole company or the whole school in teaching perspective. I mean, how many teachers do you see often that will just think of it, I'm going to go home at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and I don't think about school? And how do they compare to the ones that have progressed to senior level like you have?
Okay. There are hundreds of thousands of teachers who go above and beyond every single day. Okay. And certainly in my school, they're not clock watchers. Um, you're having to forcibly remove people from the building because they're still working late. It's really important that you get a work-life balance.
Yeah.
Okay, and one of the things that our principal is really good at is supporting staff welfare and staff well-being.
In what way?
So through simple things such as providing comfort kits in the staff bathroom, through to free breakfasts, through to protected planning time, through to an early finish on a Friday, to making sure that class sizes are low, making sure that marking and data collection is periodically scheduled across the term rather than expecting everybody to, mark and data capture feverishly. You do have to get your work-life balance, but you also have to accept that teaching it's not a 9 to 5 job. I can be sat there on a Sunday and something pops up on the television and I'm scrambling to find the remote so I can record it. So perhaps I can use that in a lesson. Yeah, it's, this isn't an office job. This is a job that requires you to give a bit of yourself. And if you give a bit of yourself, you're going to get more back in return.
Amazing. I mean, and what's next for you, Dave? Like, I mean, you're obviously deputy principal. Do you ever want to become principal one day? Do you want to run a school?
Oh, I don't know. When I look at my head and how some days how tired he looks, no, I don't know. Maybe. Never say never. If I did, I'd still want to be teaching. I'm really, really clear about that. I don't know is the answer. A number of my colleagues are saying, "Oh, you should apply for headship." We'll see. We'll see. I love what I do. I love the children. I love the buzz of the classroom. But never say never.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you just brought up a really good point, actually, which we'll finish up on if that's okay. But you sort of said you've made it very clear that you want to stay within the classroom. Now, obviously, that would imply that as you become more sort of, as you progress and you kind of go on to becoming a senior leader as an assistant head, a deputy head, you kind of move away from the classroom. And ultimately, when you start your career as a teacher, that's where your passion lies, right? And how common is it for schools to take that away from you and for teachers to kind of sometimes when they become deputy head teachers or head teachers to lose sight of the front line and how hard or difficult it can be? Because but I think sometimes from a teacher's perspective, they can look at senior leaders getting a lot more money, but the teachers are on the front line teaching every day and they're doing the hard work. I mean, what would you say to that?
I can't think of any teacher, any head teacher or deputy head teacher that I know that doesn't teach. Um, our own principal teaches a small timetable. I teach a timetable each week. I think in order to lead, you have to demonstrate. And
I
you
agree.
know, when I was at school, we never saw our head teacher. She was locked up in her office somewhere in the admin wing, and you only got to see her when you were in trouble, as sometimes I was. But less of that. No, I think it's really important that you talk the talk, you walk the walk.
Absolutely. No, fantastic. I mean, do you have any kind of questions, or is there anything that else you'd like to get across in terms of obviously during our chat? Because I think a lot of this is to give teachers a voice, and obviously you've demonstrated a little bit of frustration towards how things have been run by the government. I think your enthusiasm speaks for itself in terms of why you're a teacher, and you've given some great advice for the future generation. I mean, is there anything that you'd want to add to like your advice, or anything you'd like to say to them?
Absolutely. So I think the first thing I have to do is to give a plug for the Chartered College of Teaching.
Okay.
And I would encourage all teachers to become members of the Chartered College. It's a great organisation. I'm very proud to be a founding fellow of the Chartered College. It provides a voice for teachers as well as a professional platform, so that teachers' voices can be heard as well. I would also say to beginning teachers to join a union. I'm not going to specify which one, but it's really important that, again, your voice is heard and that you are supported by a professional body.
Fantastic. I really appreciate your time, Dave. I mean, it's been such a pleasure speaking to you,
And you,
especially you being at such a top level within the teaching profession. I think anybody that's looking to get into teaching or is early on in their career, obviously they'd love to hear from you. So I really appreciate you taking time out and speaking to us.
it's very kind of you to lavish me with the accolade of being at top level in education. You cut me in half, and what you're going to find, a bit like a rock, is teacher. Take away titles. I am proud, first and foremost, to call myself a teacher, and I would never, ever want to lose sight of that.
Fantastic. No, I love it. I mean, it's amazing, especially progressing in your career the way you have, to still have that love for teaching. It's phenomenal, because you do, unfortunately, it's so sad, because statistics show that there's so many teachers that leave within the third and fourth year after qualifying. And it's really sad, because there's a lot of teachers that leave the profession. But I mean, the future of our economy, it depends on people have sort of that passion remaining within them, and for them to keep wanting to teach these kids. And it's hard, because even from a recruiter's point of view, like when I'm speaking to senior leaders, and a lot of the time they're like, we want people that are young, enthusiastic, or early in their career that we can mold, and these things. And it kind of sometimes leaves the teachers that are from like the earlier generation kind of thinking, well, I'm outpriced, like I'm too expensive for schools. I mean, how difficult is it for those teachers? I mean, like to keep that motivation, especially if they haven't progressed to the level you have, and then to stay within the teaching profession, to keep that passion in them?
I've often thought about maybe what it would be like just to go back into the classroom and to go back into a primary school and, for example, teach year two, something which, I absolutely, it was one of the highlights of my career, teaching in infants. I guess for older teachers, there is that consideration around what you're going to cost them, because an NQT is a lot cheaper than somebody who perhaps, who like myself now, would be on UPS 3 if I went back as a classroom teacher.
Which is about £49,000 a year compared to 30,000, right? So this just
that's a lot of money in a school budget.
Absolutely.
So yeah, but what I would say is, I think a good school has a mixture of experienced staff and new beginners. Let's not get caught up in the trap of thinking that somebody who's been in the classroom 20, 30 years, is the best practitioner. You know, you could be an NQT +1 and you could go into a school and make a phenomenal impact. Conversely, it's really important that we don't write off the people who have been teaching a long, long time, you know, because for many of us, we're not dinosaurs. You know, we're still able to roam the Jurassic School and make an impact. So yeah, I think it's about keeping an open mind, and I think it's about valuing new entrants and people who've been doing it for a considerable amount of time.
No, absolutely. I think so. I mean, it's always a shame because some of those teachers that are sort of in the latter part of their career, they just love to teach. And sometimes because they might not be as enthusiastic or, well, as in something, you know, it's not even about the enthusiasm. I think what it comes down to sometimes, it's not having that, like the newer teachers tend to have this different dynamic approach to teaching sometimes. And I think like some of the teaching style for the older generation, they might be a little bit dated. And that's what I think schools tend to worry about when they're recruiting the older teachers. I mean, but not all of them are like that. So it's hard.
Certainly in our school, we have a comprehensive CPD program for all teaching staff. That includes senior leaders along the spectrum to people who are literally straight out of college. So there is that consensus in terms of teaching practice and that consensus in terms of, you know, expectations and standards. Again, you know, older teachers can make a massive contribution to a staff team as well as new entrants. So again, what I would say is it's really important that you judge the individual, okay, and that you look beyond the presenting person. And funny enough, that's what we do as teachers.
Oh, fantastic.
Practicing what we preach.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes it's easier said than done, but I mean, that's amazing, David. I mean, you've gone through so much with us, and I really appreciate your time. We'll finish up there if that's okay. But I mean, you've obviously you've given us such an in-depth sort of view from your side. I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I mean, you're a great guy. I mean, you've got so much about you, and I can see why you have progressed to where you have. And no, I really appreciate you taking some time out to speak to us.
My absolute pleasure, and everybody, don't forget, teaching is the best job in the world.
Love it. Let's leave it on that then. No worries. Thanks for your time, David.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.